It's time. Hello, my strong friends. In today's video, we're gonna talk about what it's like to be pregnant and lift really heavy at the same time. All things that I know you want to do, regardless of whether or not you can.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
Anyway, in a couple videos ago, I showed you guys the construction that was going on in our newest addition to the warehouse. So let's check in and see how they're doing. We also added a new team member. So you might see her every once in a while, although I think she's gonna be working on weekends. That's her choice, not ours. Her name's Jade. She's awesome. We love her so far. Here she is. Yep.
She's under construction still.
She's, yeah, being worked on. But it is cool to see the other side of all the pallets. And I think they're gonna completely change the way that we store all of the supplements. Haviko, as you can see, is a little less organized. Don't tell Diana I told you that. That's why Jade has joined the team, you know what I'm saying? But it's cool, look how much space we have. Hello! When we first moved into this building, we only had this much space. We started with basically the same room that you're seeing right now. We've doubled it. Ah! Just kidding.
Hard hats, we need hard hats.
We do need hard hats. Okay, let's get into the video. I asked you guys on Instagram to ask me some questions.
Did they ask?
They asked, they came through with some really, really good questions. If you didn't know, I have a couple of certifications to train prenatal and postpartum women, and I love it. It's my favorite certification that I've ever took, certifications that I've ever taken, and I love talking about it. So in this video, we're gonna do it. We're gonna answer every question that you've ever sent me in this video. Okay. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. This is becoming our official studio space. Fudge Brownie is back by the time you guys see this video, so check it out, okay? We have like 18,000 brownies in here right now, so I'm trying not to stare at them. Although all of them have been like fingered up by Grid, so. You know what the most annoying pregnancy advice is? Out of all the annoying pregnancy advice? People mean well, but they tell you to listen to your body. What the frick does that mean? There's another human growing inside of me. So someone asked, what are the main considerations that I need to take? I'm tired of hearing I need to listen to my body. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I have a couple of different categories. Let's see if I remember them. So the first is consider your intensity, then consider movement selection, then pressure management, then core, and pelvis, okay? If you can remember those 5 things, and I'm gonna go into depth into all those categories, you will be in the clear. So there's the big things that you need to consider when you're thinking about switching things up during pregnancy and postpartum periods. Okay, oh, hey. Intensity-wise, the recommendation is to leave a few in the tank, okay? There are a couple different reasons why you don't want to just start hitting 1 rep max, start taking 1 rep max attempts when you're in the gym, when you're pregnant. Lots of those have to do with pain, pressure management, overexerting yourself. All of those are things that we might want to avoid. So generally, and even the American College of Sports Medicine recommends for pregnant people to leave 1 to 2, maybe even more reps in the tank when they're training, and also choose higher rep ranges when they're lifting. So you won't see in my pregnancy program, you won't see any 1 rep maxes, you won't see anything under like 5 reps. So that consideration is kind of to force a lower intensity so that you're not going 95% of your 1 rep max. You are dialing things back a little bit while still getting a stimulus. As far as what I did for my training and how much I took percentage-wise of my 1 rep max, I didn't even really think about my 1 rep maxes. I totally shifted my mindset during pregnancy to just be, okay, I'm gonna lift to be healthy, I'm gonna lift to stay strong and avoid pain, which getting strong and being strong will help you avoid pain in pregnancy. I'll touch on that in the pelvis section of this video. And I just wanted to have fun and enjoy movement when I could. So my biggest recommendation there, mentality-wise, is to try to shift your mindset. You're not gonna hit a 1 rep max. You're not going to hit like crazy new PRs during pregnancy. It's really just not the time to do it. So if you can make that shift, you will have a better time training during pregnancy. Let's talk about movement selection. So the question that I got is there anything specific to avoid when strength training during the 2nd and 3rd trimester? When did you start changing workouts during pregnancy? And when did you start watching for coning? I'm gonna touch on coning, but to first answer your question, I started changing my workouts during pregnancy pretty early because I went into my pregnancy knowing what my program would look like. So the biggest thing as far as movement selection goes is there are some movements that as pregnancy progresses, so in the 2nd, 3rd trimester, as your belly gets bigger, it might be hard for you to complete certain movements. Something with a super narrow stance, like a conventional deadlift, my thighs might just run into my belly, and that might be hard to do when I'm super, super pregnant. Same thing with more narrow stance squats and some of those more narrow stance movements. On the other hand, we're going to also say that sometimes really wide stances might cause some pain. So keep that in mind. Not everyone experiences pelvic girdle pain or pubis symphysis dysfunction, that's SPD, but many people do. I had early in pregnancy something called lightning crotch, and it is what it sounds like, okay? And it's this pelvic girdle pain that can make it really, really difficult to do wide stance movements or do unilateral movements. So late in pregnancy, I did cut out things like lunges, Bulgarian split squats for certain times when that was being aggravated. Okay, I'm gonna take my shirt off just in case the mic is messing up. If you do find that you have pelvic girdle pain, something that might help is before lifting to activate your adductors. So you can take a deflated Pilates ball and you can do this just standing, and before you're about to squat or before you're about to do a unilateral movement that has aggravated you in the past, try to activate those adductors by squeezing the ball in between your legs and see if that helps with any SPD pain that you have. To go with that pelvic girdle pain, you will find that increasing strength and being strong just in general throughout your pregnancy will help avoid pain like that, and SI joint pain too, which all these things are really common during pregnancy. As your body is changing to give birth, things become different, and joints sometimes, as far as like SPD pain goes, your small little ligaments and like small little joints and tendons and muscles will kind of start floating. They'll just start floating there, and it can cause some pain in that lightning crotch. It sucks. Other things that you might want to do is during squats, instead of getting super, super low in the bottom of a squat, which again, for obvious reasons, you might want to incorporate a box. So the way we program it is we're not doing a box squat where we're sitting all the way back. We are using a box as a cue to cut our depth. So we're still getting some good depth. My thigh is parallel, but we're allowing ourselves to not bounce out of the hole, which might make your squat a little bit more comfortable in those later stages of pregnancy. Oh God, you see that unathletic jump? Maybe avoid those. High impact exercises, things that are known to more commonly cause incontinence, maybe avoid those. You don't have to. And as with anything that I'm saying in this video, if you find that you really want to do something that I'm suggesting you don't, it is your body. You get to choose what you do. So that's a good example of like, there are so many people who continue running, they continue high impact exercise all throughout pregnancy, and they're fine. My suggestion is if you're an elite athlete and you're going to continue really intense exercise, I would maybe work with your triad, your trainer, your doctor, and your pelvic floor physical health therapist to make sure that you're just staying safe while you're doing it. If you don't have all of those things, because that I'm assuming you're a professional athlete, if you are connecting all those dots yourself, then maybe consider some of the things that I'm saying. If you have no signs of incontinence and you're doing all of those things, then you might be fine. If you have no signs of prolapse and you're doing all those things, then you might be fine. I'm not your doctor. I'm not examining you in the pelvic floor physical therapy office. And I would never do that because I'm not a medical professional, okay? Can I continue lying flat on my back while bench pressing? This is an awesome question and often a misconception. So the recommendation that ACOG gives, which is the American College of Obstetrics, I never know how to say that, and gynecology, they say to avoid lying in supine position for prolonged periods of time while you're pregnant. So let's imagine that I'm bench pressing, okay? I get down. Okay, I unrack. How many reps do I want to do, Grid?
4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna do more because remember I just recommended, yeah. 7, 8, okay, unrack. How long do you think that was? Maybe like 25 seconds and I had a conversation in the middle of it?
Yes.
Is that a prolonged period of time?
No.
Probably not. The thing that I think they're recommending during prolonged periods of time is sleeping. If you've ever like found yourself on your back while you were super pregnant, your legs start to tingle, you start to get a little bit dizzy. If you've ever like fallen asleep on your back, or one time I was in the dentist and I was like, yeah, I think I should like get up. I was like sitting in the dentist chair. Like, can you incline me? I'm dying here. That is what they're recommending to avoid. So that 20 to 30 seconds of a bench press set is probably not considered a prolonged period of time. But while you're exercising, keep in mind those symptoms of feeling dizzy, feeling lightheaded, or feeling your legs tingle or your extremities tingle. Keep those in mind. And if you start to feel any of those during any time during exercise, obviously get up, stand up or sit up, and consider avoiding those in future sessions. You can always adjust your bench press to an incline bench super easily.
How do you get off from the bench when you're pregnant?
Oh, Grid, you remembered? Okay, we are gonna talk about coning a little bit later in this video, but when you're getting off the bench press, I want you to do something called a ninja roll. Sorry, there's a plane. Shoo shoo. Bye-bye. So how I would get up just regular is like this. I would straight up ninja flip out of the bench. But when you're pregnant, this movement where you're doing like a crunch, so that movement is more likely to cause something called coning. To avoid coning, you might want to roll to your side and sort of ninja roll out. Don't ninja flip, ninja roll. Since we're talking about core movements, there are certain core movements that aren't usually programmed in regular lifting protocols that you probably want to get familiar with and start doing when you're preggy-daggy. Reason being is, did you know that your belly is going to get really big during pregnancy? Well, it is, fortunately, because you're growing a human. Our core is going to just change so much when we're growing a baby. It's going to expand. The rectus abdominis muscles, my six-pack muscles, are going to stretch and separate, and the muscle tissue between them is going to get super, super long. So that is called the linea alba. And coning is when you see pressure pushing through the linea alba, so that separation in between the six-pack muscles. Sometimes when people have a pressure management issue, especially when they're separating during pregnancy, you'll see it like poking through, like that's pressure pushing through those rectus abdominis muscles, pushing in between them and pressing against the linea alba. The linea alba is going to keep growing and growing and growing until birth, and we might want to avoid pushing against it and possibly making it so that you lose more tension than you need to during the progression of pregnancy, and you might make it longer than it needs to be. So if you're, let's say you're, sometimes I can still see some coning. So do you see that line in between my abs? Let's do a leg raise and see if we notice any coning. I'm gonna just not do any strategies that I use to avoid coning and see what we see. Sorry, it's so hard to like mess up my breath. See anything?
I don't know, is that it?
I don't know.
Like, it's like right here.
Right here?
Yeah. No, right? Because it would have been right here.
Yeah, it would have been in the middle.
Yeah, then no.
Oh, okay, well, I have videos of me demonstrating coning, so this might be better than my healed abs now that I'm super strong and I've been doing all these things to avoid it. But after we give birth and in the postpartum period, we want things to come back together. We want our linea alba to return to its regular size, and coning session over session for 9 months or for months at a time, where you have, let's say you're doing a set of 10. So you're doing hanging leg raises and you're coning every time. You're doing 10 reps for 4 sets, and you're doing that over the span of months and months at a time. You're just pushing against it 40 times a day for however many training sessions you want. It is not that huge of a deal, right? You're not gonna like hurt your baby, but it's a pressure management issue that you probably want to avoid, so that healing in the postpartum period might be a little bit easier. So that's my recommendation to avoid coning. The reason I'm bringing up all of this coning is based on Grid's question to avoid it, and also it relates to what ab workouts can we do to strengthen the core and pelvic floor. And that was something that one of you asked. And my suggestion would be to, instead of doing movements like hanging leg raises or crunches, my suggestion would be to understand how to utilize the deep core and use your transverse abdominis. So those are things that are less intuitive for my people who have been strength training for a while. Those are things that you might not usually work on. Part of the reason why I suggest finding a pregnancy-specific program whenever you're looking into it. But things that you do want to do are learn diaphragmatic breathing, understand breathing exercises to make you feel your best during pregnancy, understand how to connect the pelvic floor with that breath, and also work on some things like deep core holds or ab wraps that utilize that TVA and those deep inner core muscles. Those are things that you don't usually see outside of ab rehab programs or pregnancy or postpartum specific programs. Sometimes you do, but not all the time. As far as other core movement patterns, find a program that utilizes functional movement. So things like rotation, anti-rotation, anti-flexion, anti-lateral flexion. Find things that train the core in all the different ways that it can move, and you might still want to avoid those things like crunches, like hanging leg raises, and instead do things like Pullup presses, dead bugs, bird dogs, heavy carries, unilateral heavy carries, so that you're training the functional core. Someone specifically asked for any alternatives to pull-ups, and I want to touch on why you might want to avoid pull-ups. It's for that same reason. When you're hanging and doing a pull-up, it is an exercise that is a high pressure exercise. Your core is stretched out, so it has less space to expand laterally, so it might go through that linea alba, and you might see that coning more clearly, or might see that coning more on exercises where you're hanging or have something overhead. With your question, what would I sub for a pull-up? Well, the natural answer would be, oh, maybe a lat pull down. But if you're seeing coning in pull-ups, you might also see them with lat pull downs. So the regression would be to lower your volume, lower your intensity, maybe do an assisted pull-up if that helps, lengthen your rest, lower your range of motion, and then consider substituting the exercise for something else. And it's not just with pull-ups, but you can do that with all the other exercises. If you're starting to see coning, make those changes first and then consider ditching that one until you're healed postpartum. Okay, we've already talked a little bit about pressure management, but the next question is specifically about the Valsalva maneuver. So the question is it ever safe to return to Valsalva maneuver or breath holding postpartum for heavyweight? My answer is yes, but it depends. First of all, the Valsalva maneuver is when I hold my breath to increase intra-abdominal pressure so that I have a more rigid torso and I can lift more weight. 100% I can lift more weight when I hold my breath and do the Valsalva maneuver. Because of the progression of pregnancy and the risk that we have during pregnancy and postpartum of pelvic floor issues, of pelvic organ prolapse, of incontinence, the suggestion is usually to avoid increasing pressure here so that you don't exacerbate any of those issues, or you don't cause any of those issues by like bearing down on the pelvic floor, holding the breath, doing all these things that we would normally do outside of pregnancy to lift our heaviest weight possible. I don't know if any of you have ever had like a grandma or an old auntie who has been like, you better stop lifting weights, you won't be able to have kids. Have you ever heard that? It's like outside of pregnancy, it's just, they're like, if you start lifting weights, then you can't have kids. That myth comes from the absolute possibility of pelvic organ prolapse. You're lifting something super heavy, similar to when we see incontinence, most commonly we see incontinence. You're lifting something super heavy, Valsalva, all this pressure is here, and for women, it's going down. All this pressure is here, and if you don't have a strong pelvic floor, you may see incontinence. You might even, in drastic cases, see pelvic organ prolapse. Not super common, especially for people who have never been pregnant or never had a baby, but it is a possibility. So that myth does come from somewhere, even though it is very over-exaggerated, obviously. Now, we open ourselves to that risk when we get pregnant and when we have a baby. Much more likely to experience those things when we're in those stages of our lives than we would be outside of it. So anything that we can do to lower the chance of those things happening is probably something that we want to do. We got another question, and someone asked, should I incorporate the Valsalva maneuver if I'm in the postpartum period? And then they say, my pelvic floor physical therapist advises against it. So first of all, if your medical professional is advising against doing the Valsalva, then I would listen to them. I don't know anything about your situation. I don't know if you have any symptoms or signs of pelvic floor dysfunction, of pelvic organ prolapse, so I would definitely listen to them. However, if you don't have any signs of those and you feel like maybe your pelvic floor PT isn't someone who's really familiar with lifting weights and some of the strategies that we use, then maybe get a second opinion, but that is up to you to decide. I would get a second opinion from someone who is more understanding of pelvic floor, but also pelvic floor in combination with lifting weights. Someone says that they're 31 weeks and have been coning since 22-ish weeks. Do you have recommendations on how to continue training in the next 10 weeks and not worsen the issue? So I think I'm gonna kind of repeat some of the things that I've already said in this video. My recommendation is for you to focus more on those deep core holds and that transverse abdominis activation to strengthen the inner core muscles first. More of those like functional core movements and doing some like lower loads, lower your volume with the exercises that you're seeing the coning. I recommend that, and work on, when you're doing those lifts, to work on those deep core holds, do the diaphragmatic breathing, and tie all of those things together. I have a series on understanding the diaphragmatic breath and understanding the pelvic floor connection. Check that out if what I'm saying seems foreign to you. If you wanna lift heavy, if your goal is like, I wanna lift heavy during pregnancy, I recommend to find a prenatal program that is going to like educate you on some of these things that I'm referencing, especially if they sound unfamiliar to you, so that you can lift heavy, not notice any of these signs of coning or mismanaged pressure or pelvic floor dysfunction, and do it in a way that you feel confident so that you're able to like listen to your body, what we kind of referenced in the beginning of the video. You can't really listen to your body if it's foreign to you. And during pregnancy, you might have moments where you do truly feel foreign. Like you feel like this body does not like only belong to you now. So those are my recommendations. And I touched on coning already. The only thing that I haven't talked about is another sign that the core isn't firing altogether, and that's called doming. So there's coning where the pressure is coming out of the linea alba, and then there's doming, and what that looks like is described as like a bread loaf. So it's when your rectus abdominis kind of protrudes during exercise, so you can see your six-pack muscles protruding out, and that's a sign that your TVA, which your TVA is like this sheath of muscle that connects from your spine and goes around, connects to the linea alba. When those rectus abdominis are just popping out, that's a sign that your TVA is not contracting and firing with the rest of your core muscles. So when it's not firing together, that's a lack of imbalance, and it means that you might need to work on the transverse abdominis and working those together. Last section for my like 5 things that you need to know. So to remind you, the 5 things that you need to know are intensity, exercise selection, core, pelvis, and pressure management. I did those out of order, but you know. So the last one that we haven't discussed is the pelvis. The question associated with this section is someone asks, is it okay to follow my normal routine with weight modifications towards the end? You get to choose what you do. At the end of the day, you get to choose what you want to do with your own body. And if there's a program that you love, then I would recommend just doing some research and understanding those 5 things that I discuss and making it so that you can make adjustments and that you feel comfortable with those adjustments. A pregnancy-specific program will choose exercises that are appropriate based on your trimester. It will help you understand pressure management and incorporate those deep core exercises and that training that is not so typical in regular programs. It will help you avoid things and teach you about things like SBD pain for your pelvis. When things are floating around there as pregnancy progresses, it will help you understand what to avoid and how to also strengthen prior to experiencing that pain, or hopefully so that you avoid that pain. So yes, you can get to choose what you want, but prenatal programs hopefully are written with all of these considerations in mind so that you don't have to worry and your questions are sort of addressed and answered even before you have them, hopefully before you even get to that next stage where you might experience a negative symptom of pregnancy or a negative symptom of postpartum. That's basically the questions. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you learned something new. I hope that you feel a little bit more confident in your prenatal or postpartum journey. Big announcement for us. Hold on, let me get my phone and show you. Hold on. Are you ready? Great, are you ready? You haven't even seen this. This is not Stronger by the Day, y'all. This is +1. Look, she preggy in here. Hold on. It's still in staging, okay? We've had the +1 prenatal and postpartum program for a while now, but this is the first time it's in an app. So it used to be like PDFs and lots of videos because there was a huge education component. So that is now all in your pocket, in your phone. And it is so much better of an experience, which means a lot to me because I know firsthand what it's like to have a baby and be early postpartum and want training, but also not have the time to train. So this is the most convenient solution that I couldn't be more proud of, okay? Okay, let's see if the little load thing comes up. Ready?
Right.
Did you see it?
Yes.
Did you see the little thing? I just love, yeah, it was like a little baby bottle, a little baby Nino. Okay, so anyway, it looks a lot like Stronger by the Day. There are a couple of huge differences. Right now I'm in trying to conceive. I'm not trying to conceive. We've already decided I'm gonna try to conceive at the beginning of 2023, okay? So don't ask any questions. But anyway, the biggest change is the resources section. So all of the education that we have is here at your disposal. So commonly asked topics and like the most important topics. So I talked a lot about the connection breath, about diastasis recti, and then you can view the exercise library. And then all of the modules that I created, a lot of them in regards to the strength training component, but I also collaborated with an OBGYN and a pelvic floor physical therapist team. So you get to hear not only from me, a video similar to this that addresses a lot of the common questions, but also you get to hear from other medical professionals. It is super hard to do what I described, to where you can connect all the dots yourself. You're going to the OB a lot. If you're training with a personal trainer, that's amazing. Most people aren't. And then hopefully you're seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist, but that is super hard to do all of those things during a busy time during pregnancy and postpartum. It's also expensive. So anyway, this is launching on Mother's Day. I believe this video will come out around that time. So I hope that, you know, you can check it out and learn more about it, and you're gonna love it. If you're seeing this and you're pregnant for the first time, welcome. Being a mom is the coolest experience of my life, outside of working with Grit every day. He's like my first child, and Emerald is my... Okay, anyway, that's the end of the video. Sorry for the long plug, but you're welcome for the long plug. If I'm gonna plug anything, like this is probably the best product that we've ever created. And in an industry that doesn't have that many resources for moms and people who are pregnant who want to get super strong and stay super strong, and doing it with their health and their happiness in mind. Okay, we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!